Namaste. Namas Sundara Nathaya Tasmai Halasya Vasine Chatushashti Vidha Leela Yenakari Bhuvasthale Shrimat Sundara Nathasya Devim Shaparalochanam Kalaye Hridaye Nityam Kadamba Vanavasinim Putam Swataf Putataram Tatoyat Gangampaya Shankara Mauli Shangat Tatpatu Mataf Pranayaparadha Padahatif Putatamam Tato Naha. So this is the second class of Shivaleelarnavam. So the first class we had a small introduction about the poet. So Sri Neelakanta Dikshita is the poet of this work, Shivaleelarnavam, and his time frame is around 1580 to 1644, which is the early part of 17th century. He is from the south, Tamil Nadu. Mostly all of the areas where he is popular is from Tamil Nadu, and he belongs to a very illustrious family where Appai Dikshitar was his grandfather, and who was also his guru. He had another great guru called Venkatamakhi, who is not only very popular among the Carnatic musicians, he is also popular as a Mimamsa exponent in Sanskritam. So Girvana Yogendra was another guru of Sri Neelakanta Dikshita. He was the Tantra guru for Sri Dikshita. This Kavi has written a lot of kavyams. We have seen Mahakavyams, Natakam, Champu, but he is most famous for his satire works like Kalividambanam, Sabharanjana Shatakam and Anyapadesha Shatakam. He laces even his Mahakavyam and even his Bhakti Kavyams with a little bit of humor that comes very natural to Neelakanta Dikshita. So you can find a lot of humor in it, in the way he writes even small kavyams. Now I will give a brief description of what the kavyam as such is. This is called Shivaleelarnavam. The name itself, the vyupatti for that name is Shivasya Leelaha Eva Arnavaha. Shivasya Leelaha, there are 64 Divya Leelas, 64 different divine sports, as we say, that he performed in and around Madurai. This Mahakavyam has about 1998 shlokas, maybe one or two this way, that way. It depends on Prakshipta shlokas and everything. So the number is 1998 as far as the book I have. The source for this, there are a couple of sources. Primarily, probably what Neelakanta Dikshita's access must have been was to Halasya Puranam, which is a part of the Skanda Puranam. In the Skanda Purana, Shankara Samhita, the Agastya Samhita is another section within that Shankara Samhita. There are about 71 adhyayas and nearly 6,300 shlokas in it. But then he has tried to condense it in about 2,000 shlokas. Purana style is very different from a Kavyam style. We will shortly, I will give you a description of what a Mahakavyam is and how the Mahakavyam should be, and then you will know. Because the Puranam gives what is as is. If you take the difference between Padma Purana story of Shakuntalam and Abhignana Shakuntalam that Kalidasa has portrayed, it's completely different. The Dushyanta in Padma Puranam or in Mahabharata, he is a total rogue, but in a Natakam or a Mahakavyam, you cannot have a bad person as the hero. So it is the poet's pratibha, it is his intelligence and it is his creativity that makes the character into a more lovable person or a more respectable person. That is his, it is the responsibility of the poet to portray such a character. Here we have no such issues because the hero of the whole poem is Shiva and there is no blemish in his character. So that sort of a adjustment the poet never had to do. So the moolam here is from Halasya Mahatmyam. Halasyam, the word itself represents Madurai. And if you see in Tamil, there are 3 texts which have been the sources. We don't know whether the Skanda Puranam was earlier or whether the Thiruvilayadal Puranam by Perumpatra Puliyur Nambi was earlier. So this sort of a date, I am not getting into the question of which was earlier, Tamil was earlier or Sanskritam was earlier. That sort of a discussion is out of question in this webinar. So I'm just going to name the texts that are available as source texts. So Thiruvilayadal Puranam by Paranjoti Munivar was in 16th century, but there was an earlier Puranam, but the one by Paranjoti Munivar is more popular, which starts as Shaktiyai, Sivamai and all that. But then the earlier one by Perumpatra Puliyur Nambi is called Thiru Alavai Udayar. Alavai in Tamil is Halasyam in Sanskritam. The word hala means a snake, and asyam is its mouth. One of the Thiruvilayadal, one of the 64 Leelas, I think the 49th in this text in Shivaleelarnavam, talks about why that Madurai came to be known as Halasya. And the Swami there is also called Halasyanatha. He is also called Sundaresha. He is also called Halasyanatha. Shiva came down. Shiva sent his Abharanam, Naga, to, once there was pralayam, sort of a pralayam, there was, the entire city was flooded. Madurai and the surrounding areas were completely flooded, and only the temple was remaining. The king at that time who was ruling, the Pandya king, he wanted to rebuild the city, but he did not know the border of that city. So he prayed to the Lord himself, because it was the Madurai temple had not gotten destroyed. So he decided that he is the only person who can decide how to build this city and what the perimeter could be. So Shiva sends his Abharanam. He comes there as a Siddha Purusha, and he is wearing a golden snake as an ornament. And he throws that snake down, and that snake takes a form of a being. And that Nagadevata says that he will do the measurement. So that Nagadevata takes the form of his original form as a snake, and he holds his tail into his mouth. And it becomes like a bangle, correct? And then slowly he starts expanding, and that becomes the perimeter of the entire city, and it was called Halasyam. Because the snake showed the way for the perimeter of the city, and the king could build that city, it was called Halasya. So Halasya Mahatmyam, athava Alavaya Udayar, all these indicate that particular Divya Leela, which we will see in the later Sargas. So this Thiruvilayadal Puranam was later. Thiru Alavayudayar Thiruvilayadal Puranam is also the same name, but it was in 13th century. That was an earlier version. It was not as popular as the one written by Paranjoti Munivar. Later, there is another text called Sundarapandiyam, which also deals with the 64 Leelas. That has been written by Anadariyappan. In Telugu also you have Chokkanatha Charitramu. Kannada, there is a Halasya Mahatmyam in Kannada also. So the south, in south, it was very popular. This text was extremely popular in the south from probably the 10th century till today, you could say. And there are about 22 sargas in this Shivaleelarnavam, and each sarga, it is not that one sarga has one leela. There may be a couple of leelas within the sarga itself. The first sarga that we are going to deal with are, it's like how Sukavi, Kukavyoho, Vicharaha, Santi. In the sense, who is a good Kavi, who is a bad Kavi? When a poet starts off his work in Bana, also Kadambari, he will give about 20 sort of shlokas about discussing about Satcharitram, Dushcharitram before starting off. who is a good Kavi? Who is a bad Kavi? How do we recognize good poetry? How do we recognize whether this is a bad poetry or not? What is better? We need to understand that before we get into the world of literature. So there is no manual as such. If we look into works like Kavya Prakasham or Dhvanyaloka, it's very difficult to, first of all, traverse through those texts. Those are called Alankara texts, which are compendiums which will tell you what is a kavyam, how to appreciate a kavyam, how do we understand which is a better kavyam, which is a bad kavyam. For that, you will have to go through probably 2-3 years to understand those two texts and then come back to this. Instead, we can read some small text like maybe Kavyadarsham by Dandin is also a nice text which gives in a simple manner what are all the works. But then more than that, in this he adds humor and in a very nice manner he gives us that upadesha. Like I told you in the first class, Yad Vedat Prabhu Samnitat. Vedam is like a Prabhu which gives us orders, whereas a Puranam is like a friend. Kavyam Kanta Sammitataya Upadesha Yuje. It is like a beautiful lady coming and giving you a lovely advice. It's like a sugar-coated pill. So if this comes in that sugar-coated pill form, then it is very easy for us to understand many concepts and use it in our life. So the first sarga here, it deals with Sukavi and Kukavi, the difference between them. Of course, the first few shlokas are completely devotional. When he talks about the Devi, Meenakshi and his gurus. And then he starts off on the Shabdartha, the play of word and its meaning. And from there only he moves on to the Kavi Vicharaha. In the second sarga, he starts with the Pandya Rajyam, Varnana. The numbers that I have given in the bracket are all the number of shlokas that are there in each sarga, in each canto. So the sarga 2 has the description of Pandya kingdom, Pandya kingdom. The third sarga has the first Leela, Prathama Leela. Chaturtha sargeto, Dvitiya, Tritiya Leele. Tadanantaram, Malayadhvaja Pandyasya Charitram. Atratu, see here, Malayadhvaja Pandya is the king whose daughter was Tatataka. Tatataka was Meenakshi's avatar. So Meenakshi was born as Tatataka and then Sundareshwara comes and marries her. So the sixth sarga has the birth of Tatataka, and then her seventh has her Ibalyam and Yavvanam. Eighth and ninth is her Digvijaya Yatra. She is the only daughter of Malayadhvaja Pandya, and so she takes on the army and she goes to Swargam and then to Shivapuram. When she goes to Shivapuram there, she sees the Ishvara, she sees Shiva, and then she falls in love with him, and then the marriage happens. That is in Sarga 11. In Sarga 12, where the Vivaha happens, there are about 2-3 Leelas there, 6 to 8. And then from 13 onwards, different Leelas are mentioned in each Sarga. So the number of Leelas I have placed here. So in the Sarga 14, you find the 15th to 17th are mentioned. In 15 Sarga, 18th to 22nd, so on and so forth, until the 22nd Sarga, you have the 62nd and the 264th Leela. So with this ends the entire Kavyam. I have just given you what is there. Each Leela has a specific beautiful story. And of course, Neelakanta Dikshita's way of describing those stories are just beautiful to, it's lovely to enjoy those shlokas. Now, I want to give you a small description of what a Mahakavyam is before we understand what the difference between the Puranam and this. So we may wonder that if we have Puranam, why do we need a Mahakavyam? Right? We have Valmiki Ramayanam. Why do we need a Bhoja Champu? It's a more beautiful way. Puranam and Itihasam, as I said, it is like a friend who advises. If there is always a friend, why do we need a spouse here? But a spouse's role is very different. The wife or the husband's role is very different than that of a friend. So the Kavyam introduces many aspects in a more beautiful manner. We learn to appreciate what is given to us by God around us. So he describes so many other things. Actually, if you read the Itihasam and Puranam, that too has such beautiful expressions, and it is almost like a kavyam in many places. In fact, it is like a kavyam in many places. Poets have received that kavya nayam only from the Itihasa and Purana. It is not something that they have created on their own. They have built up on Vyasa Valmiki. Just as Vedanta Deshika says, or even Kalidasa says, Purvesmin Krita Vagdvare Sutre Manikana Iva. So Kalidasa, when he starts off Raghuvamsham, he says, I am not doing anything new. People have written, Vyasa and Valmiki have given all these gems in their Puranam and Itihasam. I am only collecting all of those and stringing it into the form of a Mahakavyam. So the Mahakavyam as such is a technical term here. And there are certain lakshana, there are certain definitions for what becomes a Mahakavyam or what can be termed as a Mahakavyam. So here in Kavyadarsham, Dandi is a southerner, actually, or Kanchipuram. The Dandi Alankaram in Tamil is also very famous. So this Dandi, the same Dandi, has written a work, a treatise on poetics Alankara Shastram, which is called Kavyadarsha. Kavya Adarshaha. Adarshaha is like Adarshaha is a mirror. So it is like a mirror to a kavyam. It will show you what are all there. When we stand in front of a mirror, we understand what is there. We can't see ourselves. So if we have to judge a kavyam, if we have to judge how we are, we look at ourselves in the mirror. In the same manner, if we have to judge a poetry, a kavyam, this Kavya Darsha is like a mirror to show us what are good and what are the faults. If this is present, then you can consider it as a good Kavya. If this is not, if this is present, then this is a bad Kavyam. Tatha Kavya Doshaha, Kavya Gunascha Tatra Varnente, Tadanantaram Ye Amshaha Mahakavya Rupena, Ye Amshaha Santi. If all these amshas, all these parts are present, then it is called a Mahakavyam. It starts off with Sarga Bandho Mahakavyam Uchyate Tasya Lakshanam Ashir Namaskriya Vastu Nirdesho Vapi Tanmukham. I'll go through these very briefly. If there are any doubts, you can ask me a question at the end. I will stop about 10 minutes or 15 minutes earlier before the time. So Sarga Mahakavyam, Sarga Bandhaha Mahakavyam iti uchyate tasya lakshanam. Mahakavyasya lakshanam evam uchyate. Mahakavyasya lakshanam evam uchyate. Sarga Bandhaha Mahakavyam. A Mahakavya is that which is bandha, which has these separations, these it is built up of different sargas. So sarganam bandhaha yatra vidyate tatra mahakavyam. Tat mahakavyam. It is divided into sections. That's why you will have Prathama Sarga, Dvitiya Sarga, and all that. So Sarga is the name of the chapter. Ashir Namaskriya Vastu Nirdeshaha Vapi Tan Mukham. Tan Mukham, Mahakavyasya Mukham Prathamam, Dwara. The entrance to a Mahakavyam will always be of three types. One is either an Ashirvadatmaka, where Patubha Shivaha Ityadikam. So Shivaha Vaha Patu, let Lord Shiva protect you. Tadrisha Rupam Yadi Mangala Shlokaha Vartate, Rupaha Yadi Mangala Shlokaha Vartate, Tarhi Tatra this thing. And then it is called Ashirvada. And then Namaskriya. Namaskriya is where the poet says Aham Vande. So Vagartha viva samprikto Vagartha pratipattaye Jagatah pitaro Vande Parvati Parameshwaro. Tari Parvati Parameshwaro Aham Vande iti Kavehe Namaskara Rupa Mangala Shlokaha Tatra. That is its Mukham entrance. That is the first shloka. Or the third one is Vastu Nirdeshaha. This Vastu Nirdesha is something that is, Vastu is, let's say, Vastu is the plot. It can be a plot, or there can be just the names of characters that are going to be presented in the poetry. That can also form a part of the first shloka. So, Ashihi, Namaskriya, Vastu Nirdeshaha. These are three types of beginning shlokas or Mangala shloka for a Mahakavyam. Next is Itihasa Katha Udbhutam Itaradva Sadashrayam. What could be the plot? When we said Vastu Nirdeshaha, the plot here, the Katha Vastu can come from either Itihasam, Itihasa Katha Udbhutam. Itihasat Udbhutam Bhavet, Athava Itarat, Athava Anyatra Yatra Kutrapi Sadvishayaha Vartate Chet, Tat Sadvishayam Ashritya Mahakavyam Prachalet. So sad ashrayam itarat va. So it can depend on some good concept or a good sad vishaya. It can mean either a sad purusha, or you take a a good concept, right? A good moral or something that can talk about good things. So sat ashrayam itarat va asya kathayaha udbhutam bhavet. Chaturvargapala ayattam. It is based on Chaturvargaphalam, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. All these four it can be based on all these four. Chatura udatta nayakam. So the nayaka should be chatura. He should be clever, and he should be udatta, generous. In Mahabharatam, Dushyanta will say, I cannot believe you. He will remember Shakuntala. He will remember being with Shakuntala, but still he would say, how can I accept a person? He will in fact abuse her with words that should not be spoken to a woman. That's the character of Dushyanta in Mahabharata. But Kalidasa just immortalizes Dushyanta as the epitome of Sanskriti, of Samskrita culture. So Chatura Udatta Nayakaha. The poet should adopt that character in such a manner that only you can only portray an ideal character in the Mahakavyam. And he should be Chatura, clever too. Nagara, Arnava, these are all the descriptions that can be there in the Mahakavyam. Nagara, city description. Arnava, Samudram, Shaila, mountain. Ritu, Shaila, Ritu, seasons. Chandra, Arka, Surya Chandra. Chandrodaya, Arkodaya, Varnanaihi. Chandra, Arka, Udayaihi, Udaya Varnanaihi. Udyana Salila Krida, Madhupana, Rata Utsavaihi, Ratotsavaihi. Udyana Varnanam, Salila Varnanam, Salila Krida Varnanam, Madhupana Varnanam, Ratotsava Varnanam. These are all different types of descriptions that can be there. Madhupana, drinking alcohol. Ratotsavam, enjoyment. Vipralambhaihi, vivahaischa. There should be separations, there should be vivaha, weddings, descriptions. See, wedding description, you cannot have a wedding description in a natakam. That's why a natakam is not categorized as a Mahakavyam here. Mahakavyam is only that which is present in a prose portion. So you can describe a vivaha in a very elaborate manner. In Kumara Sambhavam, Kalidasa describes the vivaham of Shiva and Parvati, taking up one entire sarga, 7th sarga. Mantra, Kumara Udaya Varnanaihi, the birth of Kumara, children. Raghuvamsha has the birth of Raghu, Aja, all of those kings, right? Rama, Lavakusha, and all that. Mantra, Duta, Prayana, Aji, Nayaka, Abhyudayaihi, Api. Abhyudayaihi, yeah, okay. Mantram is counsel. That is what is the let's say this is not our mantram that is there in Tantra Shastra, which you have the bijaksharam and all that, which you do japam. That is not the mantram that he describes here. Here the mantram is a counsel between a king and his minister. Duta is a messenger. And then prayana is any sort of yatra that a king takes, like we saw that we are going to see in Sarga 6, I think, where Tatataka takes the Digvijaya Yatra. Aji is a battle, description of a battle can be there. Nayaka Abhyudayam, the greatness of a Nayaka, or if a Nayaka is in a very, if he has been defeated, and his progress can also be described in this. Alankritam, asankshiptam, rasa bhava nirantaram. It should be filled with rasa and bhava. Asankshiptam, it should not be a condensed version of, I have described Ramayana in just one shloka. Tathana. There is rasam, there is a shloka, Navarasa Ramayana shlokam. Shungaram, Kshitinandini, Viharane. Dhairyam, Dhanurbanjane, Viram, Samudramat, something like that. Chattana Raudram Ravana Mardane Ityadikam Asti. So Pratyekasya, he takes every incident of Ramayana and says which rasa is there in that Ramayana shloka. And this forms the entire Ramayana. At the same time, it has rasam, parantu ati sankshiptam asti. Ekasminneva shloke tatra sampurnam Ramayanam rasapurvakam vidyate. Parantu tatra rasam nasti. In this episode, there is this rasa. That's all there is a mention. So it should not be sankshiptam like that. Asankshiptam. There should be a nice big description of it. Sargaihi anati vistirnaihi. The sargas, the divisions of chapters in a Mahakavyam has to be named as Sarga. Every Mahakavyam you find, there are 5 Pancha Mahakavyam. There are 5 principal Mahakavyams that have been named before, which is by Kalidasa's Raghuvamsha Kumarasambhavam, Naishadhiyam, and then you have Shishupala and Kiradarjuniyam by Bharavi. Shishupala by Magha, Naishadhiyam by Sriharsha. These are the Pancha Mahakavyams that people commonly talk about, because these are older kavyams. People have written Mahakavyams later if they follow these lakshanas. That is why I am talking about these lakshanas. It is not only those 5 Mahakavyas that are Mahakavyas. People have written Yadavabhyudaya Mahakavyam, Vedanta Deshikaihi Pranitam Tate. Tatra Yadavasya Abhyudayaha Varnitaha, and Krishna's Charitam is described in that entire thing. That is also another Mahakavyam. Nilakanta Dikshita himself has written Ganga Avataranam, and that is a Mahakavyam too. Sargaihi. Adhyaya is a word that is used in Itihasam or in Purana, in other places, but in Mahakavyam you use the word Sarga to indicate a chapter. We call it canto in English. So Sargaihi Anati Vistirnaihi. It should not be too big also. I don't know what that measurement is here. But as we read, we understand that Kalidasa has only 59 shlokas per Sarga. In Shivaleelarnavam, we find about 80 to 100 shlokas. Whereas in Naishadhiyam, every chapter except probably the 5th Sarga, you have at least 200 shlokas there. So what is that measurement? We don't know. We will try to find out. Maybe not 500 shlokas. I guess 200 is probably the limit for everybody. So Shravya Vrittaihi. The Vrittam should be, Vrittam is meter. Each meter of each shloka should be in a very pleasing manner. It should be fit to be heard. Shravyam. So it should be Maduram. Kadki inimaya irukadum. Andha madri. So Susandhibihi. Sandhi is connection between one story to another story. If you are going through, there can be a principal story, there can be simpler, smaller episodes within, but each episode should be connected connected with something called Sandhi, and that connection should also be very smooth. When you are transitioning from one episode to another episode, the transition should be beautiful. As you read Kavyams, you will understand that. Sarvatra bhinna vrittantaihi upetam lokaranjanam. Bhinna vrittantaihi. There should be different stories there, which should also be very attractive to the people. Kavyam kalpantarastayi jayate sadalankriti. If a kavyam has all of these varnanas and it also has different types of stories, then that kavyam will be kalpantarastayi. It is going to stay until another kalpa. That is, it will be chirasthai. Nyunam api atra. Now he has mentioned some 25-30 points here. Should a Mahakavyam have all of these or not? Dandi himself answers that. He says, Nyunamapi atra yaihkaischit angaihi kavyam na dushyati. A kavyam will not be treated as a bad kavyam because it is less by one or two aspects in this. Yadi upatyeshu sampattihi. That's very important. Whatever has been adopted by the poet, he may have just used a Shaila Varnana or a Nagara Varnana. Tavadeva. Parantu yadyad varnitam tatra sampatti purvakam varnitam chet tatra ati shobhai bhavet. So yadi upatteshu sampattihi, if there is a sampatti, it's not literally prosperity, there is a wealth of description, there is a wealth of beauty in whatever little bit that the poet has taken and described. Then tad vidhaha, kavya vidaha aradhayati. Those people aradhayati tad vidaha. Maybe this, I think it is tad vidaha. 1 minute, let me just check the text and aradhayati tad vidaha. Atra tu, it should be the tad vidaha. Third. Nyunam aradhayati tadvidaha. Kirtayanti iti. Okay. So only those people, if any of these are less by even one aspect, that is fine. So people will praise this work if whatever has been described here are beautiful. Now we have two vrittas. There can be two many meters, but usually in one sarga, only 1 meter should be followed right through, and there should be a change of vrittam, change of meter at the end of the sarga. You can either have the last shloka as in a different meter, or you can have the last couple of shlokas in a different meter. Now, what the poet has adopted here is, he has adopted 2 meters. One is Indravajra and the other is Upajati. So Indravajra, the Lakshanam here is Syad Indravajra Yaditau Jagaugaha. Syad, if you are familiar with the Chandas, I'm assuming that you're all familiar with Chandas. If you're not, please go through Soumya Krishnapur's course on Chandas. She has done an excellent job of describing all these meters. So I'm just assuming that you all know, and I'm going to go through this very quickly. If you want a detailed understanding of this, please go through her course. So Syate Indravajra Yadi Tau Jagaugaha. This is the definition of Indravajra. This is a Guru letter. Syat, Indra, Indra, and then you have, it is divided by 3-3. Syad Indra Vajra Yadi, and then Yadi Tau Jagau, and then it ends with 2 Guru letters. This is how many vrittams are going to be in this sarga. So Putam Swataf Putataram, this is the first shloka, is in Indravajra. He uses Upajati more than Indravajra. I'll quickly tell you what is Upajati also, because the second shloka is in Upajati. Upajati has a combination of both Indravajra and Upendravajra. Upendravajra Jatajas Tatogau is, so in whichever padam, there are 4 padams in a shlokam. So in one of the padam, it can be Upendravajra and 3 can be Indravajra. You can have permutation combination of it. That is why he has chosen Upajati and Indravajra for this entire sarga. So Anantarodirita Lakshma Bhajau Padau Yadiyau Upajatayas Taha. You can make the same type of description for the distinction, like Anantarodirita. So here you see this is Upendra Vajra. The first portion will be Upendra Vajra. The second one will follow the Indra Vajra definition. So the second shloka is in Upajati. But most of the shlokas are either in Upajati or Indravajra. Now we will go to the first shloka today. Okay. Putam swataf putataram tatoyat gangam payaha shankara mauli sangat tatpatu mataf pranaya paradha padahataihi putatamam tato naha. The poet's Ishta Devata, as I said before, his guru is Girvana Yogindra, and Girvana Yogindra was his Tantra guru, and the first book also when he had in his hand was Devi Bhagavatam. So the divinity in him, not only even though he is describing Shiva Leela, Shivasya Leelaha Yadyapi Varnitaha Atra, he cannot, he gives the first shlokam as a Namaskaratmakam, Naha Patu. It can also be Ashirvadatmakam, but he talks about Ambayaha Charana Yugalam there. So tat patu matuhu pranayaparada padahataihi gangam payaha patu. He only talks of Gangayaha payaha. Gangam payaha. I have given the Anvayam here. The Anvayam can differ in whatever manner you want. You can change it, but mostly this is suitable for the way I explained. So I have given a type of Anvayam. Yat Gangam payaha tat naha patu. Gangam payaha. Gangayaha idam Gangam, Gangayaha idam Gangam payaha, the waters of Ganga, tat naha patu, let the waters of Ganga, the flow of Ganga or Ganga river, protect us. So Ganga herself is pure here. Swataha putam. Putam swataha, tataha putataram yat. So there she is giving 3 gradations for Ganga. Ganga already is Pavana. There is no Pavani, Pavitrasa. There is no question about it. Why? Because she was brought to this world by Bhagiratha. Ramayane to Ganga Avataranam katha vidyate. Balakande. Right? In I think in 38th Sarga, from 38th Sarga to probably 44th Sarga, the entire description of Ganga's Avataranam is given there. And how, Sagara Maharaja had 60,000 sons. They went and they were going to perform the Ashwamedha Yagam. And Indra stole that Ashwamedha Yaga and tied it in Maharshi Kapilashrama. Kapila, when all the 60,000 sons came in search of the Ashwamedha Yaga horse, and they found it tied in the ashramam of Kapila, and they accused Maharshi of stealing it. It was actually Indra who stole it, but then they accused the Rishi of stealing that horse. So the Rishi became very angry about it, and he burnt all of those 60,000 sons. So from then on, everybody in that family have been praying for Ganga to come down to the earth. She was only present in Swargam, and she was not present flowing in earth. And they were praying for Ganga to come down. When Bhagiratha did his tapas and he pleased Bhagavan Brahma, Brahma came and he said that, Ganga, when she comes to this earth cannot bear the flow of Ganga. She is extremely powerful. Gangayah patanam rajanna prithvi na sahishyati tam vai dharayitum veera na anyam pashyami shulinaha. Shulinaha anyam na pashyami. I don't see anybody other than Shiva who can bear that force of Ganga. So you will have to go and do tapas to Shiva, and ask him to take the force of Ganga and let go just a small stream for this earth to bear that, tolerate that Ganga. So Bhagiratha again goes and performs a tapas to Parameshwara. Parameshwara also appears in front of him and says, Preetasteham narasreshta karishyami tavat priyam. I will do whatever you want. Shirasa dharayishyami shailaraja sutam aham. I will bear that Ganga in my head. And so Ganga she fell down, atimahadrupam dussaham vegena. She fell down with a great force, almost, and at that point of time, Shiva just held her in his Jatamandalam and then released just a small streak of flow. And that flow itself is so huge on the earth, right? On Bhumi. And she was released. He also went to Patalam, where all the ashes of Sagaraputras were there, and they were rejuvenated. They were sent to heaven. So this is the story of Ganga Avataranam. As soon as the ashes, as soon as Ganga fell on those ashes, they all got their Sadgati. So Putam Swataha, Ganga automatically, Swataha, Swabhavata Eva, Putam, Gangam Payaha. The waters of Ganga are by nature very pavitra. Tadanantaram, Shankara Mauli Sangat, Tataha, Shankara Mauli Sangat, Puta Taram. Tarap and Tamap are comparative and superlative pratyayas that are added. So Putam, it is pure. Puta Taram, it is more pure. Because of Shankara Mauli Sangat, Parameshwarasya Shiras Sangat, Jata Jute Yada Sa Patita, Tata Pavitratara Abhut Sa Ganga. So Gangam Payaha, the waters of Ganga, became even more pure when it came and had that touch, Sangam, of Shankara Mauli. Shankarasya Maulehe Sangaha Yada Asit Tada. Tadanantaram Kim Abhavat, it became Puta Tamam. The idea here he gives, this is where the poet shows his Ishta Devata as Meenakshi or Parvati. So he says that waters became even more pure. It became the purest form, Puta Tamam, because of being hit, Pada Ahataihi, hit by the foot of Matuhu. Matuhu, Pada Charanaravindena, Ahata Sa Ganga, Athava Ahatam Tat Payaha, Tat Jalam, Putatamam Abhavat, Pavitratamam Abhavat. What is this concept? That how can she become, when is this? Why? That is because Pranaya Aparadha. This portion is your clue for how, Ganga being on the head of Shiva, Ambayaha Charanantu, Adhaha Atra Vartate, Katham Ubayos Sangaha Atra Jayate. How can those two come together here? So Pranaya Paradha. The clue here is I have to take up Soundarya-Lahari. I can't because this is the only thing that can explain that. Bhagavad-pada has written a shlokam. In the 86th shloka in Soundarya-Lahari, he says, Mrisha kritva gotra skalanam ata vailakshyanamittam lalate bhartaram charana kamalam tadayatiti. These are all small love quarrels that go on between Shiva and Parvati to indicate that anyonyam between the two of them, between the divine couple. So he wanted to fall at the feet of Parvati. Parameshwara wanted to fall at the feet of Parvati. And so he decided to do something, a mischief. When explaining the Durga Chandrakala Stuti, there was a Purana Katha where he called her Kali in Rahasyam, that she is very dark. Adunatu, we will call it as, they are being, how to say, it is a slur, right? It's an abuse. You don't say someone is dark or someone is fair. Tadrisha, you don't make that sort of a discrimination today. But then in the Puranam, just to make her angry or just to give another avataram for Devi, he calls her Kali in private, and then she goes, does tapas and drops her body, which is a kosha. And then Kaushiki, she is called Kaushiki after that. And then she comes out as Katyayani. These are all divine play. That's all. So Pranaya Aparadha, Pranaya Kale, Pranaya Kalam is during their Prema Kale, Aparadha Pramadaha. There is a mistake that he does, which is like talking of some other name. அது என்ன தலையில் ஒரு மங்கை பக்கத்தில் ஒரு மங்கை இல்லையா அவருக்கு வந்து he has a woman on his head and he also has one on the side. He has two women, so he wantedly says some other name. Let's say he probably says Ganga to Parvati while addressing Parvati. He doesn't say Parvati, or there are so many Sahasranama, there are 1,000 names for Parvati, Lalita. But he doesn't use that, and he uses someone else's name, Gotra Skhalanam. That is called Gotra Skhalanam. Anya Nama Upayujyate Parameshwarena. This is only for, we say in Tamil, Valayattaga, just as a for play. And Brisha Kritva Gotra Skhalanam Atha Vailakshanamitam. After saying the wrong name to Parvati, she gets upset and he falls down at her feet asking for forgiveness. And Lalate Bhartaram Charanakamalam Tadayatite. She is still not willing to give up her anger, and so she hits his head with her leg, it seems. Pranaya Paradha Pada Ahataihi. Tatha Tasya Jatajute Ganga Vidyate. Ambayaha Charana Sangat Tatra Ganga Pavitratama Chata. And when the moment her feet touches Ganga, that Ganga becomes even more pure. So Tadrishameva Ganga-payaha, that is the only water that should protect. Okay. So Putam Swatav Putataram Tatoyat Gangam Payaha. This is an Ashirvadatmakam shloka where he says Tat Patu, Tat Ganga, Naha Yushman, Naha Ityatra Yushman, let that waters of Ganga protect you. I will just say the meaning one more time. So Ganga Swataha Putam, Gangam Payaha, Yat Gangam Payaha, the waters of Ganga, Swataha Putam, which is already pure by nature. Shankara Mauli Sangat, because of the association with Shankara's Parameshwara's Mauli, his head, Jatajuta, due to the association of that, Tataha, then she is more pure. The Gangam Payaha, the waters of Ganga, is more pure. Matuhu Pranayaparadapada Ahataihi Tataha Putatamam. She is the most pure by being struck Ahata Tadita Padena. Ambayaha Padena Charanena. So by the feet of Devi, when the Lord had committed, when Shiva had committed an offense during love, Pranaya Aparadha, Pranaya Kale, Prema Kale, Yaha Aparadaha Kritaha Shivena, Tat Aparadha Karanat, she is still angry. She is not willing to let go of that manam. That itself is a play between them. This in the Saundarya-lahari, if you see the last line, it says Chirad Antashalyam Dahanakritam Unmulitavata Tulakotikwane Kilikilitam Ishana Ripuna. And Dahanakritam Unmulitavata. Manmatha, when he wanted Shiva to fall in love with Parvati, he came in front of both of them and he tried to use an arrow and make Shiva fall in love. But Shiva burnt Manmatha right in front of the eyes of Parvati and her friends. She was more upset because it happened Sakhi Purataha. When the fifth Sarga starts, he would say Sakhi Purataha. Generally when you insult even a child, when you insult a child or when you shout at your child, if you shout at him in private, it's okay. If you shout at the child in front of his friends, he will say, why did you do that in front of my friends? You should have brought me aside and done it. Tatha Asidu Parvatyaha Manasi api. She also felt Sakhi Purataha. He had burnt Manmatha, saying that your beauty is of no use. That was there present in her mind. Antashalyam Iva. She wanted to take revenge for that, it seems. Tatha Dahana Kritam Antashalyam Unmulitavata. He could remove that Antashalyam, that hurt that he had hurt her at that point of time. That hurt he could remove only at this point when he fell at her feet. Lalate Bhartaram Charanakamalam Tadayatite. So Swataf Puta Matuhu Pranaya Paradha Padahataihi Tataha Putatamam Yat Gangam Payaha. The Alankara here is Paryaya Alankara. I'm just making a mention of these. So paryaya alankara, the lakshanam is paryayena ekasya aneka samshrayah. If the same object is seen as going into from one adharam to another adharam, then it is called a paryaya alankara. So Ganga is being seen as she was first in the akasham. Tatra akashe vidyamana sa Ganga prathamameva swataha putam asit. Puta asit. Right? First akasha eva adharaha tasyaha. Tadanantaram ishwarasya jatajutam. Tadanantaram Parvati charanam. These are the three different adharas where she moves from one support to another support. That is described in this shloka. And so it is paryaya alankara. If you are unaware of these alankaras, then that's fine. Not to worry about it too much. I just thought I will mention that also as we study. So I will stop with this. Putam swataf putataram tatoyat gangam payaha shankara mauli sangate tatpadumataf pranayaparadha padahate putatamam tato naha. If there are any questions, please you can raise your hands. Are there any other? Yes. Raman sir, yes. I think you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Okay. This Leelarnavam, has it taken place all around, all within the perimeters of
Madurai?
Shivaleelarnavam? I don't remember reading the Shivaleelarnavam Puranam in detail. Just
so most of it is in and around Madurai, or it will probably be in Sarga. So that is but the first one starts with if anything happens in Swargam or in the Kailasam, the prayashchittam happens in and around Madurai. So most of it is in the surrounding area only.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Radhika Mahodaya. Yeah, I think you can unmute yourself.
Namaste, Mahodaya.
Namaste.
This usage, kalpantarasthai. Yeah, I understood that here it is used in the sense of chirasthai, long-standing. But
yes.
I just wanted to know that if this usage, if I come across this kind of usage anywhere else, would it also mean like till the end of one kalpa? Or could it also mean that chirasthai means across many kalpas, it will be chirasthai? Can that interpretation also be
so
there?
Kalpantaram itself is Anyaha Kalpaha Kalpantaram. So Anyasmin Kalpe Api Chirasthai. So or you can say until another kalpa has started, you can this is going to stay. You can even say kalpantara paryantam maryada. You can have it as maryada. So there is something called maryada and abhividhi. You can cross over kalpas, or I would suggest, generally kalpante sarvam pralayam, everything goes and merges in, and then it comes back again in the other kalpa. Usually things are repeated in each kalpas. Correct? So, or you can even say kalpantara can mean until the beginning of another kalpam, tat paryantam, pralayakara paryantam, chirasthai ityapi vaktum shakyate.
Both interpretations are possible.
Possible, yes.
Kalpantaramna across kalpas.
Across kalpas.
Illa till the beginning of another kalpa.
Another kalpa.
அப்புறம் இன்னொன்னு எனக்கு ஒரு எண்ணம் வந்தது, இந்த ஸ்வதஃப் பூத்தம் ஸ்வதஹான்னு இருக்கு இல்லையா? சோ அது அந்த ஸ்வதஹாங்கிறதுல இந்த உபன்யாசகர்த்தா எல்லாம் சொல்லி கேட்டிருக்கேன். கங்கா பவித்ரம் ஸ்வதஹா எப்படி ஆனாள் அப்படின்னாக்க வந்து விஷ்ணு
விஷ்ணுபாத சுதா தேவி,
ஆமா, 3 பேரோட சம்பந்தமும் அதுல இருந்ததுனால, சோ இங்க சிவனுடைய மௌலி சம்பந்தத்தை சொல்லியிருக்கா பூத்த தரம்க்கு. So the Swataha Putamgatla Vanda and the Vamana அவதாரத்து போது பிரம்மா கமண்டலுவால அவர் வந்து விஷ்ணுவோட பாதத்தை பிரக்ஷாலம் பண்ணதுனால அந்த பிரம்மாவோட சம்பந்தம் விஷ்ணு சம்பந்தம் ரெண்டும் இருந்ததுனால ஸ்வதஹ பூதம்னு ஒரு எனக்கு இது ஒரு சுவாரஸ்யமா எனக்கு தோணித்து அந்த இடத்துல.
Right. So Ganga's utpatti itself is Vishnupada Chuta Devi. Tada Shankara Jatajuta adukapram adu oru shlokam irukku. So she came from the foot of Vishnu adu onnu, and tadanantaram it also her srishti itself was a pure form. Adunala Brahmanuடைய சங்கமும் இருக்கு. அது நல்லா இருக்கு. Yes. That's nice.
Dhanyavadaha. It's absolute bliss உங்க வகுப்புல உட்கார்ந்து. And
there are a couple of
100% what Soumya Bhagini said the other day எனக்கு வந்து இப்போ அனுபவிக்க முடிஞ்சது.
Okay, there are a couple of questions, so I'll address that also. So now I'll mute yours. Arun Kumar Mahodaya, and I saw yours next. So before you start asking, you can unmute yourself. There are a couple of questions I'll just check. Ganga and Parvati are sisters since both of them are considered as Parvata Raja. Yeah, so there is another version where Sa Jyeshta Haimavati iti asti. Parvati is also, there are 3 daughters, Ganga and then Parvati, and there is another daughter also. I'm not sure. I have to check the Puranic encyclopedia for the other thing. Ramayana api asti sa Jyeshta iti, and Parvati is the second one, Menayaha putri iti. Okay. Adukapram, is this story of Parvati hitting the Ganga by her foot in any Puranam, or is it the poet's imagination? I'm not sure about the Puranam. It is possible that it is just the poet's imagination. The Shankara has imagined it. There is also an example of Rama falling at the feet of Sita, which is described in Uttar Ramacharitam. That is also there. I would say this is the poet's imagination. Yeah. Adukapra only, is it Garvabhanga of Ganga herself? Yes. Ama. Ganga, she had a great garva when she fell down, and hence Shiva wanted to control that garvam. Adinala he let go of only a small portion of Ganga. Okay. Arun Kumar Mahodaya.
Madam, sthayi word oda grammatical aspect enna madam?
Sthayi oda grammatical aspect tisthati sthayi adula irundhu dhaan varudhu ungalku illana sthayi na vandu tisthati iti sthayi da adula nini pratyam varudhu. Ama
stha dhatu illaya madam?
Ama stha dhatu adodla you put in nini pratyaya, stha plus nini pratyam, tishtati iti sthayi.
The upateshu, the noun enna madam anga?
Edu
upateshu nu oru vaatha sonnீங்க இல்லையா?
Upateshu, I don't remember where it was. Idliya?
Not in the sloka. When you were conversing, you said about it.
Upattamman irukkalam. Upattamna koodinadu. Upattamna koodinadu along with.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Alladu upattamna attained, labdham ityapi vaktum shakyate.
Okay. Dhanyawadaha, ma'am.
Okay, and then there are a couple of questions. Oh, Rajlakshmi Mahodaya, yes, you can talk.
Atra Gangaya Payahayava Bhutam Bhutataram Bhutatamam iti.
Satyam.
Hello?
Come, yes. This does okay. Avladane, where are the questions irukka? Okay. Okay, now does this Kavyam significantly differ from Tiruvilayadal Puranam? It is, the stories are the same. அதாவது என்னென்ன the way the story proceeds is more or less would be the same, but then the way he describes would be different. அது யூனோ தமிழ்ல சொல்ற கண்ணு காது மூக்கு வச்சு அது சொல்றது ஒவ்வொருத்தரோட ஒரு கவியோட ஒரு கிரேட்னஸ் பொறுத்து. So it's the way he describes would be very different. And then is it not believed Ganga also wanted to marry Lord Shiva, or is it wrong? I don't think Ganga wanted to marry Lord Shiva. That is probably a later this thing of everybody. Apram, there is another question. Pranayaparadha. Pranayaparadha, the Vigraha Vakyam there is, I would say, Pranayam Prati Aparadha. அப்படி எடுத்துக்கலாம். So you can call it as or Pranaye Aparadha. Pranaye Aparadha, Pranayaparadha. Pranayaparadhat Pada Ahatam. Irkalam. That may be, there is another someone has raised. Kiran Mohdya. Yes, I have given you permission.
Pranaya Kale Aparadha. Can it be done like that?
Pranaya Kale Aparadha ityukte tatra madhyama padalopi samasaha. I mean, it's a little I'm just
Okay.
Pranaya Kale Aparadha. Pranaye Aparadha ityeva Pranaya Vishaye Aparadha. So we can take it as Vishaya Saptami and do it as Pranaye Aparadha. Maybe better.
Okay.
Huh? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? Upajati Vrittam. Someone has asked about Upajati Vrittam. I think I have explained Upajati has both this Indra Vajra and Upendra Vajra in it. So it depends on each padam. That's all. Okay. That's it. Okay, we will meet next Dvaimaturam. Okay, we will meet next week. Thank you so much. If there are any questions, you can also send an email and I will try to go through them. Okay. Namaste.